find what is self's ideal? And as to how high that ideal is? Does it consist of or pertains to materiality or spirituality? Does it bespeak of self-development or selfless development for the glory of the ideal? And be sure that the ideal is rather of the spiritual. For what, first, is thy ideal? Is it in the spiritual, in the mental, in the material? For he, that is the giver of all good and perfect gifts, may bring in thy experience the glories, the beauties, the understandings of a purified, a glorified body, in the service of him that is the giver. Truth is growth. For what is truth today may be tomorrow only partially so, to a developing soul. So, the ideal is that which as truth grows towards a constructive nature in the experience of each soul. Not self-indulgence, not self-glorification, not self-gratification, but that which being the basis for expression may be glorified, may be kept as a standard. Not self. Know that thy ideal is to be founded in that which is eternal, thus of a spiritual nature. For those things that are temporal soon fade or pass away, and only that which is founded in righteousness is eternal. While shortcomings arise in the material or astrological sojourns of an entity, these need not become stumbling blocks if the ideal is chosen that is not for selfish motives, rather selfless. That the individuality may become more and more as the purposefulness in the living personality of right, of good, as manifested in the ideal pattern for every entity that enters this material plane. First, find thyself and thy relationships to the creative forces. In thy abilities to write, ye may then find a channel of expressing same. Study then to show thyself approved in thine own conscience, to thine own ideal. And know that ideal is in him, Jesus, who became the Christ by overcoming the world. Each entity seeks and should know first within self what is its ideal. Ask thyself what is thy ideal mentally, spiritually, physically? And know that ideal is able to answer to any question, any disturbance, any experience that may occur in the experience of self under any and all circumstances. For it is thine own self from the beginning, working with and in coordination with the divine, that is the gift of the creative forces in making manifest in a material world those attributes which are of the creative nature. These are the children, the seed, the property of light, that is, hope, patience, long-suffering, brotherly love, kindness, gentleness. Hate, jealousy, despair, any that take hold of darkness, are the children of darkness. These ye would put away. We each have our lessons to learn, our virtues to magnify, our faults to correct. There is a standard and an ideal by and through which each may gain a greater and better concept of these purposes. The pattern, to be sure, is within. The ideal is the law of the creative influences and forces as manifest in the experience of each and every entity. As the activity in the earth is to be a manifestation for the glorification of the creative force, it must be then less and less of self and more of the ideal, if the ideal is God or the purpose for which it entered. Be joyous in the Lord. Love others as ye would have them love ye. As ye meet to others, ye meet to thy Maker. With the same measurement ye judge others, thy Maker, thy God, thy ideal is judging thee. Thy body, thy mind and thy soul are each in their sphere of awareness, one. Hence the ideal must be one. Thus he that came into the earth as an example, as a way, is an ideal, is the ideal. They that climb up some other way become robbers of that peace, that harmony which may be theirs by being at one with, that he manifested in the earth. As the ideal is spiritual, rather than mental or material alone, in the application, does the knowledge of those things that make for the satisfying and bringing peace and harmony and contentment into the experience of the soul that makes such applications in the material things of life. If your ideal is set, ye may so live as to be an example for many, and yet never be one of those who is so high and mighty as not to know that God is not a respecter of persons. He respects character, loveliness, kindness, patience, gentleness, brotherly love, and these manifested in thy experience will make thee a lovely person. What ideal is meant in the statement by keeping an ideal, not an idea, an ideal, before self? An ideal means that to which the entity may, itself, never look up, knowing itself to be gradually becoming a portion, but never may it be the whole. something to look up to or to attempt to attain to, not an idea that I may do this or I may do that I may accomplish such and such through such modes of operation. For then one reaches the goal. An ideal is that is sought by and developed to be at an at-one-ment with same, a portion of same, but never the whole. In the present there may be seen much of the determinations in gaining that to which the entity sets out to accomplish in whatever may be the field of endeavor to which it has chosen for the reaching out. This ever makes for development when the ideal is set in constructive influences. Who then is thy God? Ask that within thyself and obtain the answer by and through that ye have set and do set as thy ideal. And know as to whether that ideal is able to keep his promises to thee or whether they are of the earthy and fade as do the shadows of life itself. Find that is the answer ever for self as to an ideal to be worked toward, to be used at all times, to be leaned upon in adversity and in criticism, in successes, in failures, in pleasures, in hardships, in adversity and in those conditions that are as entanglements of the mental or physical being. Find self first. Know in whom and in what ye believe. And know that the author of thy ideal is able in spirit, in every influence, to keep that committed. Thus may ye find thyself and find peace, here, now. Know that thine own conscience cannot be seared without producing disturbances that may never be healed. Be true, then, in all such experiences, with thine own self and thy ideal. For each soul, each entity has an ideal, in the mental and in the spiritual phases of its experience, as well as that which is being sought by the entity. Know that as that ideal is held within self the attainment will arrive, without as well as within self. As to the mental healing, know first thine own ideal. What is thy ideal? Is the author of thy ideal founded in spirit? Is it the light? Is it the maker of all that is in the earth, be it perfect or imperfect according to what man has done with this opportunities? But he in himself was perfect, and thus becomes the light, the savior, the way, the truth, the life. That is the ideal, not merely in a spiritual sense. For if that light is that which may control the spirit force in self, and in the choice self may take, does it not also then in the same sense control the results as will be obtained in its materialization in the affairs and the experiences of the individual? That is the ideal and the source of all healing. What is thy ideal? Is it wholly set in material things? Is it at an at-one-ment with that which is of a spiritual nature? Or is it of such a nature that the mental is more often the judge and this, not at all times wisely? Judge ye, but let that mind be in thee that he of old gave, others may do as they may, but as for me and my heart, my house, I will serve the living God.